Debuting at a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, The Meg to the Trench does not have a lot going for it. As a big enjoyer of the first film, I was really excited going into this one, and I wasn't expecting some Jason Statham masterclass because when has that ever happened? But I was expecting another good time, and when that initial Rotten Tomatoes score came out, I'd be lying if I said that the 0% didn't excite me a little bit. And while The Meg 2 might exceed the first one in scale, it is not nearly as good. But that's not to say this movie is bad. I don't know, to be honest, I'm still trying to justify it because I had a fun time, but that does not mean this is a good movie. Now, before we get into all of my thoughts on The Meg to the Trench, let me know what you guys thought of this movie in the comments down below and stick to the end of the video for my final rating. But this movie basically takes everything from the first movie, but scales it up. I mean, every single technical element of the movie is also scaled up, along with just the fact that there are like 5 Megs. Anyways, this movie is basically Jason Statham solo squatting a bunch of megalodons, and that says enough for itself. But I will say, for most of the movie, it doesn't have that flair that the first Meg had, and I think the main reason for that is because there's an actual villainous human presence here, whereas in the first movie, it was man versus Meg. In this movie, it's man versus 4 Megs. And I get it, you have to scale up the story, you have to create something that feels different while still having that same core man versus Meg feeling. And the tagline for this movie was "New Meg, Old Chum," and as stupid as that sounds, I was super excited because I was like, it's more Jason Statham fighting Megs, and that is the case. Again, a lot of this movie is that, but that secondary human presence kind of takes away from a lot of that central man versus Meg conflict. One thing that hasn't changed from the first movie, though, is the fact that this movie has absolutely garbage performances. These people do not know how to act, and I stand by that. Jason Statham specifically, which I'll talk about at the end of this video, but as a whole, no one in this movie can act. But that's what's fun about the Meg movies, I guess, because it just, like the fact that they suck so much at their job, yet I was so entertained for the entirety of this movie. I guess they're doing something right. Anyways, performances aside, the action in this movie is a lot more epic than the first movie, but that's not to say that it's better. I think the final act in the action specifically there is better, but as a whole, overall in the film, since it is a little bit more human on human, and honestly that thrill of the Meg is kind of gone now, other than when they're first entering the trench in this movie, there's not really that mystery around the Meg anymore. There's mystery around other creatures, which they kind of play into, but never to that full thriller aspect that they were going into with the first movie. So it lacks those action elements in the first 2 acts, and they go all in the final act 100%. I mean, it's Jason Statham solo squatting Megs. I'm gonna keep on saying that because that is just an insane statement, but that action is absolutely amazing. I'm just saying, as a whole, it wasn't really well rounded. And one thing I will praise both the first and second Meg movies on is the CGI, and especially in this one towards the end, since they do introduce other creatures from the trench, they have bigger creature battles, and it actually looks really, really great. And the story as well isn't bad. It's evolved from the first movie, which again, I feel like they just have to do. And that's not to say I was a fan of the fact that they spent so much time on this human thing, but as an evolution of the first story, I see the direction that they were going in. Not to say the execution was good, but I see the vision. Because the first act is actually really, really cool. It takes the story from the first movie and kind of moves it along and has a great progression of overall storytelling with the past characters and new characters, and I think they do a great job transitioning. But the second act is a little bit boring. I did a double feature, and this was my second movie of the night. I was tired, and I was honestly very close to dozing off. I had to sit my seat upright so I wasn't falling asleep because the second act of this movie was really, really boring. Again, minimal action, but also just a story that's very human based, and that's not really why I'm coming to this movie. But the final act, like I said before, the final act, amazing action, all that cool stuff, it's just so unbelievable. It's just so stupid, but I love it. My eyes were glued to the screen the entire time. It was so much fun. But the thing that the Meg 2 makes me question the most is how the hell Jason Statham is still employed. I do not know what he brings to Hollywood. I'm being completely honest with you guys. No offense to him as a human. He might be a nice guy. I don't know him. But anything I've seen this guy in, especially the Expendables 4 trailer, which I've seen God knows how many times, I cannot understand what he does. Like, I don't get what is so special about him. He's a big white dude, he's shredded, I get that. But at the end of the day, I am entertained by him on screen. I mean, he could definitely be replaced by literally anyone else on this planet, but he was on screen for the Meg 2, and this movie is really not that great. It doesn't deserve a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. A big part of that is because the action is entertaining. Jason Statham, at least he puts a show on. So for the Meg 2, I'm gonna settle at a 6 out of 10. A very, very enjoyable movie, at least for me personally, as I did enjoy the first one. But as always, let me know what you guys thought of the Meg 2 The Trench in the comments down below, and subscribe so you don't miss any time I upload a video or I go live. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.